Welcome back to another episode of the Unheard Perspective podcast. We're your hosts, Sasha Riva
and Basil Said.
And today we have a special guest with us, California State Assembly candidate Cheyenne Kenney. She is running for District 18, Oakland, Emeryville, Alameda.
She's also a guest on Tucker Carlson tonight and endorsed by Vivek Ramaswamy. She's Oakland grown, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Now let's dive into discussion. So tell us more about your candidacy and how did you decide to run for state assembly?
So I really wanted to run just to represent the people of Oakland and really the people of California, since the laws that I would be voting on would be affecting all Californians. But I've been going to the Capitol in Sacramento for a long time. I'm really into grassroots lobbying, and I've been seeing how these legislators just don't seem to care about their constituents and all the different things that Californians are going through with crime, with a child trafficking crisis, this attack on parents. It just seemed like it was really time to step up. So I felt called to do that. And now that's what I'm doing.
Sounds good. I think we saw it was a pretty good deal when Vivek Ramaswamy, former presidential candidate, endorsed you. How did you feel about that? A big candidate. He's now supporting Donald Trump, and he endorsed you in front of 10,000 plus people at AmFest. And he said that if you share the same values he has, then you have his endorsement.
Oh my gosh, that was an incredible feeling. It's a pretty funny story, because about a month out from America Fest, when I saw that Vivek was going to be speaking there, I looked at my dad and I said, I'm going to get Vivek Ramaswamy's endorsement. And he's like, yeah, sure. Okay, Cheyenne. It's like just thinking, oh, all right. I was absolutely determined to make it happen. I told this to my team too, and made it happen. And I'm so honored to be endorsed by him too, because I really like his foreign policy. And I think that he brought up certain issues surrounding foreign policy onto the debate stage that weren't talked about before he brought them up. And now this is like a hot topic for all the candidates. It's kind of what distinguishes a lot of these candidates from one another. So I'm absolutely honored to have his endorsement.
Okay, let's go back to California topic. We have discussed prior that California is really a lost cause. A lot of people will say that we cannot win elections and we just have to give up. California is just not being represented as well wanted. What do you think about that, and what is inspiring you in this fight?
So this is definitely something that's talked about a lot within the conservative movement. And now really a lot of people feel that California's just gone down the drain, or that, there's nothing we can do to improve the state of California. And that's something that I've always strongly disagreed with, because California is my home state. I grew up here. I've stayed in the same area my whole life. And I don't just want to run away from all of these problems. I want to fix them. And I want to raise my kids here in California because it's such a beautiful state. It's the most beautiful state. I've traveled all throughout the country, and every state has its own special thing, but this is my home and I'm not just going to let it slip away from me. So one example of how I've seen that there is hope for California, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Assembly Bill 957, but it was authored by Lori Wilson, and it would make it to where a parent who's a non-affirming parent, so like a parent who does not affirm a child's gender that they identify as, that parent could lose full custody and be criminally prosecuted for neglect. So this bill was directly going to affect so many parents in California. One of them, for example, is my friend Harrison Tinsley. He has a son who's 3 who wants to be a little boy, but mother, his ex, unfortunately forces him into dresses and makes him identify as a girl, despite the fact that the little boy wants to be a little boy. So this is just one example of how this bill would have been so harmful to a person's situation. So Harrison and I did a lot of lobbying at the Capitol. We spoke with legislators about our concerns with this bill and how it can seriously lead to harming children and taking away parental rights, and that we need to be looking at these situations in terms of what's really going to be best for the child, which is to have a parent in their life. We spoke on that a lot, and there's a lot of testifying, a lot of lobbying, a lot of bringing it up on news stations, and it became such a hot topic. It had so many eyes on it that Gavin Newsom even was hearing about this, and the bill did not pass. So we put put a stop to that. The attack on children with this one bill, then who's to say we can't stop it altogether?
Well, we know that California right now is mostly a Democratic state, but you in the state assembly, for example, how do you see yourself working with legislators, officials that may be Republican, Democrat, or even independents who don't share the same values or ideas that you do? What do you think about those challenges that face your district, and how do you plan to effectively address them?
So I intend on just leading by example and not being afraid to share my opinions, because here's the thing I've really noticed in my time throughout my experiences with activism and running my campaign is a lot of these issues are not as partisan as people like to paint them to be. So example, with the issue of parental rights. When I talk about this with Democrats, I have gotten them to say that they will vote for me because I believe in parental rights. When I really break it down and open about how I feel about this. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm against what they're doing to our children, but I just feel too scared to say something. This is also a reflection of our legislature. We have really progressive Dems that are in the legislature, and they blackmail the more moderate Dems and they bully them into voting for their bills. So I actually think that there's a lot of hope for working with the more moderate Dems in order to ensure the protection of kids, because the majority of people know this has been taken too far with what they're doing.
Your video with Tucker Carlson went viral on the internet. Basically, you were DMV office showing people how there are no DMV manuals on English language. How does it make you feel? And just after the viral video, did anything change regarding that? After that, did they do anything at DMV office? Did finally printed out enough of the manuals?
Yeah, so I went back afterward a few times, and I think it was about 3 months later that they finally brought the English print manuals back. But that was, oh man, being on Tucker that was my first big interview that I had ever done. Person who's one of my heroes, and then being able to say that I got to be on his show and talk about something that happened in my hometown. I'll always be so proud of that.
I'll switch to Governor Gavin Newsom for a second. I'd like to ask you about foreign policy, but you're running for a state assembly, so I'll speak about Governor Gavin Newsom. He's been controversial for a while, especially since 2020. Later on, even, he won the recall election. He defeated Republican candidate Larry Elder. So let me ask you, what do you think about Governor Gavin Newsom's policies and leadership in California, especially concerning issues, whether it's borders or just California's issues? You live in California, you know the issues. What do you think about his policies and leadership?
So I have never been a fan of Gavin Newsom, but I think when I really just felt the need to really get involved with politics and with activism, it was a result of how he was handling the COVID outbreaks and how he was just enforcing these draconian lockdowns. His lockdowns really affected me and my family personally, because my grandma, she was in a retirement home and they were not allowing visitors in the retirement home. And when people get up to a certain age, their family is everything. It's the only thing they have. So we were not allowed to visit my grandma because of these lockdowns that Gavin Newsom was enforcing, and she stopped eating and she eventually died. And this was the result of Gavin Newsom's policies. And it happened to a lot of the other elders that were living in that retirement home too. That was really something that affected me deeply. I just thought this can't continue. People need to be able to have human connections, and this is just completely unconstitutional to say you can't go outside, you can't talk with your family members. So that really pushed me. That man does not seem to care about anyone. I was with Aaron Friday a few months, I think it was last summer, and we were lobbying against AB 957 and against anti-parent bills promoting parental rights. And we actually ran into Gavin Newsom. And so Aaron Friday was asking him, what do you think about people who regret transitioning? What do you think about Chloe Cole? She transitioned when she was just a teenager and she regrets it. And he just scoffed. He just scoffed in her face, just laughed. I have not been happy with Gavin Newsom for a very long time, and we definitely could use with far better leadership.
Let's talk about the border security and immigration policies that really continue to be a huge deal. We saw, for example, in Texas, where there is a showdown between the Border Patrol Agency and the Texas National Guard. So California is also a border state. How do you view the current state of affairs at the U.S.-Mexico border, and what steps would you take to advocate for any changes or concerns that the American people see?
Right. So I 100% stand with Texas, and I think what the federal government government is doing right now is really bad. They do have the jurisdiction to decide what they want to initially do with the border. But what we can do as state officials is I could sue the federal government. We can declare an invasion, and then we can hold them accountable for not taking border safety seriously. It's just a matter of like going over hurdles of like, okay, the federal has jurisdiction over this. So what can we do within our own lines of what say we have?
So how do you plan to work with law enforcement, healthcare professionals, and different community organizations, especially specifically about the problem in California as it is nowadays of fentanyl? We have daily cases of people who are dying from fentanyl, and those cases are mostly children, teenagers that are 15, 16-year-old. So what are you planning to do regarding that?
So again, I think that this issue definitely relates back to border security. A lot of people have suggested building more rehabilitation centers, and I don't think that's a bad idea, but I think that that's taking away attention from finding the root cause of this fentanyl crisis, which goes back to the border, right? So securing our border would fix that problem. And I also think that we could definitely use with looking at healthcare professionals. They prescribe these drugs to these kids and these people, and then when they need more drugs, then they turn to fentanyl. So we need to start penalizing healthcare professionals for prescribing these harmful drugs that they don't help people. They don't. They get people addicted, and then they end up turning to fentanyl. So we definitely need to address that. Also increasing penalties for people who deal fentanyl to minors, because it definitely is affecting our young people. That's one way we can protect them as well. Definitely, again, securing the border and making sure people aren't bringing in fentanyl into our state will fix the problem, the root cause of the problem.
I'd like to ask you, what do you mean when you say you're fighting for the protection of kids, medical freedom, gas power, safer streets?
So when I say I'm fighting for protection of kids, it has to do with just this attack on parental rights and trying to separate children and parents, because we're seeing these common themes popping up with some of these bills that legislators are trying to pass. It all has to do with separating child and the parent. A child's parent is their main protector. So why are you saying don't tell mom and dad? That's concerning, right? So I think that we need to adopt way more parental notification policies. The materials that are in some of these school books are disgusting. It's stuff that adults can't even handle because it's just so graphic. And there's no way that little 5-year-olds should be hearing about this or seeing men dance naked in the classroom, and then the teachers say, oh, parents can't even come inside and be supervising their children. This is an attack on the innocence of children, and we need to protect the innocence of children. And another aspect of protecting children means eradicating child trafficking. It's a crisis all throughout the country, and it's really bad in the state of California. So that's something that needs to be tackled and addressed. I plan on introducing a bill that would deploy special task forces to find these children and return them back home to their families. And I really think this is something that we need to fix, because not enough people are doing anything about it. Another aspect of my campaign is medical freedom, which I think I talked about a little bit when I was talking about how Gavin Newsom was running things. But, we often think about medical freedom when we think about, the COVID vaccine mandates, and then this is like a past problem. But I don't think that this is where it stops. And my reason for this is more recently, Assemblymember Liz Ortega tried to pass a bill that would require college students to get the HPV vaccine. And I actually spoke with her directly on this bill. And I said, look, I don't want my future to be taken away from me just because I don't feel comfortable putting this vaccine in my body. Luckily, it was moved from a requirement to a recommendation. So I do think that these medical companies are going to continue to try and work with the government to mandate these vaccines so that they can make a profit. When it comes to the preservation of gas power, Gavin Newsom has been pushing for a ban of gas-powered vehicles for a really long time. He originally was saying, we we should get them banned by, I think it was 2030. That is an attack on our freedom. And the truth is, electric, I just don't think that it's as reliable as gas. I think recently there was a story that came out somewhere in Chicago or Michigan. People were not able to rely on their electric vehicles. But if people want to purchase an electric vehicle, that's perfectly fine. I just think that everyone should have the option. It's an important aspect of classic car and motorcycle culture, which is a big part of California history. Finally, when it comes to safer streets, I mean, this has been such a hot topic for Californians, and my city of Oakland is being talked about on the national level because it's always been pretty crime-ridden, but it's never been this bad. That's because of a lot of these bills that have been passed. Like, for example, there was a bill that was passed that makes it business owners could be prosecuted for defending their own property. And of course, we need to repeal Prop 47, which allows for people to steal up to $950 worth of products. I think that these are all issues. They're relevant to the country, but they are especially relevant to us Californians. And that's why I really want to tackle them.
That is shocking because I've seen the video of Governor Gavin Newsom speaking at the meeting regarding the stealing problem. He was shocked and he saw a person stealing. Nobody did anything in the shopping center because, well, it's $750. And then Governor Gavin Newsom says to that lady, why nobody does anything? And she starts blaming Governor Gavin Newsom for that, not realizing that the Governor Gavin Newsom is standing in front of her. And then she gasped and she realized that it was him. And then she started taking pictures. But he said funny and stupid because, well, she just blamed me for something that I've never done. But in reality, all of his policies are coming to this issue. You are Gen Z. How do you see it going moving forward with young people such as yourself running for office at the early age in the political world full of older generations? Especially right now, we can see president are 75, 80-year-old, and some of them are not even simply can manage the office. What do we do, and how we as young generation can step up in this game?
So an interesting statistic that I saw said that Gen Z is actually more interested in current issues than the 3 previous generations combined. That's pretty amazing. And I think what escalated that for a lot of people, again, was the lockdowns, because we had a big part of our youth stolen from us. Like, we missed out on proms, we missed out on graduations. And so it put a lot of us in this mindset of we need to decide what we want our future to look like. So I'm definitely seeing more of a trend with young candidates popping up. I'm not the only one in the Bay Area who's running. In fact, a lot of the Republican candidates in the Bay Area are 30 or younger. And I'm predicting that we're going to see a lot more of this. Anyone can run for office. No one can tell you that you're too young or that you don't have enough experience, because young people are being affected by these policies. And therefore, we have a moral responsibility to shape the world into what we want it to be.
Well, that's it. And thank you for being a special guest on the Unheard Perspective podcast. Cheyenne is a state assembly candidate in California. She's a youngster that is willing to rise and help Californians. She's 22. We look forward to having you again on our podcast, hopefully not as a candidate, but as part of the state assembly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll be looking forward to that.
And to our listeners, if you have our perspective to share, feel free to connect with us on social media. And until next time, stay informed and stay engaged. And let's continue seeking the unheard perspectives that shape our world. Thank you so much for listening.